Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode of My Story. Pastor Mark is traveling, so we just pray for safe travels for him and his family. My name is Rayanne, and today I'm joined by my dear friend, Alycia Johnson. We initially connected through a mutual friend at the church that she currently goes to and sometimes is serving at, and also through writing, and some of our background is similar as well. And we're usually talking in a coffee shop. I have my coffee here, so this is a little bit different for us, but we're just so excited to have you and just to hear about what Jesus has done in your life. So please share with us what the Lord has put on your heart.
Thanks for having me, Rayanne. Super funny. I feel like I said this before we started. Of like, usually I feel like crying in a coffee shop for some reason. Like our conversations always go that deep. So I'm really excited to see where the conversation goes today. And it's like, as I was thinking about how God just orchestrated you doing the interview, I think it's just opening a deeper depth to where we go. And it's really cool in this season. You are asking me to share my story. And there's so many things I could share. And a lot of times it's been about my family and my family's story. But God's really been moving me into the season of my own story, independent of my family and just who I am as an individual. So, like, starting the drive here, it was crazy. When I was 15, we moved to Milwaukee. My dad got a church because he's a pastor. And when he got the church, God's like, okay, go to Milwaukee. We had no plan. We had no place to live. So we lived in a hotel right here. And we lived there for a couple of days as we like scouted neighborhoods and were like, what can we afford? Where can we live? And we ended up finding a place around the south side of Milwaukee. We had no understanding of the city. And I came from St. Louis, which is 100% different than Milwaukee. People don't realize that. Like, I grew up in a predominantly Black community. That was very natural for me. And that's just how I was raised. My dad was an associate pastor there. And so we came to Milwaukee and we didn't know about division, the different things going on in the city. And we just operated like we did in St. Louis, like we were raised in the church to operate. And it was really cool how God orchestrated. And today, like, I'm just seeing his continued favor over how he's orchestrated the story to bring things we learned in St. Louis here into Milwaukee. And we stayed in that hotel, ended up on the south side of Milwaukee, and we had the best time ever. I hear a lot today about different neighborhoods and how you want to live this place or that place. And I have learned so much about how God's presence is wherever you're at. And he
Amen.
can orchestrate any neighborhood. And I'm currently living in that house we lived in when I was 15. And it's just incredible because it's a block that has so many different religions and nationalities. Our neighbors across the alley, their kids are always running around. He's from Iraq and he was granted citizenship after helping the military. And so we hear so many cool stories about his family. We have like Hmong people, we have African American people, Hispanic people. Like, we're always our neighbors will leave presents outside the door sometimes, or we'll
sweet.
like grill and then give it to the people upstairs.
Nice.
And so I just think about God and how he places you somewhere for a reason, even today, and how he is not limited by our human imaginings. And I've really been thinking about that a lot lately, how we make all of these idols or place them at higher levels, things like where we live, how much money we have, what our race is. And it's something you see in both the city and the church here, this overemphasis on things that have nothing to do with heavenly matters or Jesus. And I'm so grateful that's not something I was raised with personally. And just seeing the different adventures I've had, which is how I met you, throughout the city, and how, for me, when they came in with the RNC recently, there was this public press about don't go to Milwaukee. And there were like all these things that were negative.
Yeah.
And I was like, I just have so many joyful memories on every block. And it's because of the mindset my parents taught me bringing into these environments. It's like, who can you find? They don't need fixed. They just need Jesus. And
Amen.
Where can you find Jesus together? And like, as I was driving here, it was crazy because one of the first buildings my dad did a church in was a hotel. And I was driving here and I had this other memory of getting baptized in the swimming pool in the hotel by my dad. And so like, a lot of people don't know things like that about me because our church was very tiny, like 5 people, and it was usually all women. To this day, my dad's church is still all women. But it's like fond memories of that, of like, yeah, I got baptized in that hotel. I lived in that hotel briefly. And then I was on the south side, and like, we have all these friends to this day. And it's just been so incredible because my parents poured all that in for free. They paid to do ministry, and they never received anything in return monetarily. They're not wealthy. They were teenagers when they had me. They were in their 20s raising me. Mm-hmm. And it's like, they didn't ask to be paid for it. It was just loving on the people around them. And lately I've watched God's favor is he has paid me to do everything my parents have done by myself.
That's beautiful.
And it's been so fun to watch. Like, my mom used to spend a lot of time helping other moms in the community in St. Louis. She would help the single moms. I just remember our house being filled with so many kids and teenagers. Everybody wanted to be there, and I would be jealous sometimes because I'm like, are they here for me, or do they just want to go hang out with my parents? Like, there was one girl who spent the night, and I don't even think she talked to me the whole night.
Yeah, she was just talking to your mom.
Yes.
Nice.
And I was like, okay, this is strange. But my house became that in my 20s, as I had those adventures of just people coming in. There was one point that was semi-strange where I had mostly young men over every Monday night in my kitchen because I grew up with a very zealous father. He had some very interesting ideas about the Bible as he grew and learned. There was a point where he wouldn't wear jeans.
Okay. Just as a not wanting to dress casually thing, or
I'm still not sure.
Okay.
He would have to clarify that.
Interesting.
But like, there were things like that as he was like growing and learning, and he's just being really zealous. And so I encountered all of these young men that were just like him, and they're like new Christians. You're friends with quite a few of them. Okay. And they had these ideas, and I'm like, so why do you do that? It's like, you know what we need to do? We need to have fun. And so we would spend Monday nights, and I would literally make them come up with an activity and make them choose, like, what do you like to do for fun? And then one was like, let's read the book of Revelation. I was like, hold up, no.
That's super fun. Not intense or anything. It's just all fun.
Yeah, we're going to be here all night reading Revelation. No, that's not where we're going.
All-nighter.
It would have been very interesting if I was like, how can you relate to someone that doesn't want to read Revelation?
Right.
And it was really cool because of being raised with my dad. It's like, whatever, you all are going to do what you're going to do. But it opened these doors of like having one night, it was craft night. We literally cut out crosses and drew pictures on them. It was very cute.
It's like a Sunday school craft.
It is. Love and it was picked by a 25-year-old.
I love it.
And so it's just like, that is how I was raised to be. And I got to like see that play out and got paid actually in ministry to minister to single moms at the same time.
Nice.
And so like the things my mom did for free, I was paid for. It's not about money, but it's about seeing like God really making sure I was provided for and knowing that I was cared for. And I think that was something that was missing in my younger years and as a family, where we truly knew that God's people provided for us as we served others. And it's just continued to, like, even the job I have now, which I'm not going to get into, but I actually knock on doors in the streets a lot. Every Saturday as a child, we were actually required to go out in the streets and knock on doors. And I'm like,
you're being prepared.
Okay. I was, because I did not apply for the job. I have somebody was like, this is for you. And I'm like, oh, I know how to do this. And so it's really cool because I have knocked on doors in neighborhoods that my parents and I did together when I first came here.
So when you were about 15, like sophomore in high school age. Okay. So what was that like as a young person? Was it intimidating? Were you just following what your parents did, or what was God doing through you, or how did it feel to do that as a young person?
As you say that, that's what surprises a lot of people is like it never bothered me. I always just had the
awesome.
coolest encounters. We have funny stories because when we were in St. Louis, I was not allowed to go with them because I
Okay.
was younger. It's
Right.
actually a lot more dangerous in St. Louis than it is in Milwaukee.
Interesting.
And so they had to go to like 2x2.
Okay.
And I remember hearing stories from my dad and his friends of women opening the door naked and stories like that.
Yeah,
and then I
so
was
they
like,
were just trying to protect your eyes a little bit, right? Okay.
it was funny stories like that, and I found it very humorous.
Right, because you're younger, like, why was she naked? That's weird.
Exactly. And I did not encounter that in my teen years, but what I
that's good.
encountered was things like we had someone who was in a neighborhood who promised to kill for us.
Wow.
We love
That's some
Jesus, so he's
loyalty.
going to kill for us. And we're like, I don't think that's in the name of Jesus, but thank you for your allegiance to our family.
Well, you know that is very genuine. Like, that's a meaningful
Yes.
thing. Even though it's not what you would probably agree with or endorse,
Yes.
that's pretty meaningful for someone to say that to you, because most people wouldn't do that for someone that's not their
Yeah.
own family.
That's very true.
So you really connected with these people. Your family really made an impact for them to be saying things
Yeah.
like that, which I think is really beautiful. Yeah.
It really is, and like you say that, and I think that's why like I've been in a weird position, and we've talked about this a lot,
Mhm.
of running a pregnancy clinic during the race riots on that block in Kenosha.
Mhm. Oh,
I
wow.
started
Okay.
a nonprofit ministry with a girl who was actually in the neighborhood in St. Louis where the race riots were there. So I was there after that. And so I've experienced a lot of the aftermath
Mhm.
and been in the middle of a lot of riots, not by choice, but by that's where God
Just
literally
where you were.
placed me. And it was
Mhm.
bizarre. But what I encountered in that was like, I didn't understand the fear people had. People from the outside looking in who would ask me questions, and that comes from that door knocking as a teenager and from being present in those communities. It's given me a different perspective of seeing God's grace and understanding those people and understanding what they're really going through and being able to look beyond anger and fighting and say, how can I remain calm in situations like that and be a part of the solution and bring understanding? And we've talked a lot about this. I haven't always been like that. There's definitely like a firecracker part of me that's like, okay, I do know the injustice too.
We've all got a
But-
little bit of that.
Exactly. But I've learned to say, okay, like, why did God place me there? And how does my story play into that? And for me, it's been somebody came to me and I would get bothered because God would be very much like, hands off, don't speak on these matters and things like that. And someone came to me and they said, that's because these people know you will be there when the riots leave because you already were there. So you're not going anywhere. And for me, that was really powerful because as believers, we all face storms. And who do we look to? We look to Jesus, obviously. But like within community and faith community where we live, who do we know is going to be there in the good and the bad? And it's like, that's cool because for us as individuals, that's a reflection of Jesus here on earth. It's saying we're going to be planted and we're going to love in every season, no matter whether it's the riots where you're nationally televised or
Right.
if it's just an ordinary day. And I feel like God has taught me in every season about faithfulness and how doing that and remaining committed to the people I grew up with, to the communities I grew up with, it's like really shown me a piece of God's heart for faithfulness and steadiness and how he's always there.
Praise God. So, going back a little bit, I think that's really beautiful, and this kind of ties into that. You were saying when you and your family first moved here, you weren't aware of what the city is like. You know, we're such a melting pot of a city. Even the block you live on now, you've clearly got so many different types of people, backgrounds, cultures, ages, I'm sure. We're just such a melting pot, but we are very separated. What was that like trying to reach people here and, kind of break through that with the love of Jesus and bringing faith community, and just not really letting those things affect you? How were people responding? What was it like between them and your family? If you can maybe explain that a little, because you're saying it's different than St. Louis.
It was lonely, to be honest, and it's still at times it can be. You are hearing me with a way more tamed tongue now than when I started, and there are pastors that will attest to that. But it's in the beginning, my family is still we're just private people. We don't really actually need a lot of people. We're very happy. You know that. You've met my family.
Right.
And so, we were fine with the aloneness. But what I experienced was very difficult at the beginning because my sister needed school uniforms, and we went to the north side to get them right after coming. Right. And that, for me, was coming home. It's very familiar. Right. And we walked in, and a security guard followed us through the uniform store, and he said, "Get out of here. You're white. You're in danger here. Leave." And we're like, "Wait, hold up."
Yeah, why are we in danger? What
are you talking about? And so he explained, I am doing this for your safety, and you're not going to be safe over here. And that was the first time I had encountered a divide between me and the people I was raised with, essentially. It's oh, we are different. And that was extremely difficult. And I actually continued to see that. And we talk a lot about racism more from a Black perspective. But for me, I even went to apply to the medical college for a scholarship fund. And it was for minority. It did not clarify race, but they saw my name on paper and they thought I was Black. Because when I walked in there, I actually saw it on their face. That they looked at me and they were like, "Whoa, your whole story does not sound white. Your name doesn't sound white. And now we see you're white. You're denied."
Interesting.
And that happened in college too. Was there were scholarships I couldn't receive because of my skin color, which I don't really care. I believe that God doesn't want us to have a mentality of people are prejudiced against me or people are different than me. We should respect each other's differences.
Yes.
And God will make a way. And we're giving a foothold to the devil when we say my skin color, it puts me at a disadvantage. We're saying that God can't do something. And that's something that God worked in me through these experiences, because there were a lot of times people even tried to give me platforms prematurely that I was thankfully smart enough to say no to. I should not have been given a microphone then. And I remember I would have said things that promoted a mentality that doesn't point to Christ at the end of the day, that doesn't say he's the ultimate victor and I can do all things through him. And so all these experiences, they shaped me at first, where I did go through this season. We both talked about this, of social justice and celebrating social justice and where it needs to be Jesus over all those things. And I think I'm grateful for the experiences I had learning each neighborhood and encountering things like finding out, oh, I'm very different than the people I grew up with. But it was through that I discovered who Christ is and how he made me the victor. And if I had believed the lies of victimhood, I wouldn't have the job I have now, nor would I be capable of having it, because let me tell you, I would probably cry at least 10 times a week because I would be like, I'm a victim. I can't do this. Why is everyone yelling at me? But with Christ, you can do all things.
Amen. So, okay, so you're knocking on doors and it translates into what you're doing now. What is the in-between of when your family was first here, you're in high school, you're going with your parents through their ministry, and then you said that kind of flows into the ministry that you have now. How did Jesus move to get you from there to here? What's kind of that in-between time look like?
So you're hitting a spot of the differences between my family and I, as my family was not fully raised in the church. And so
Okay.
they ended up in a church that could be classified under cult. And so my parents looked to them as parental spiritual leaders.
Right.
But they were very controlling. So like in St. Louis, we lived in apartments owned by them in homes, and they were not high quality, to be honest. So my experience with the church was very unique in that it was highly controlling, took a lot of our money. And like one day the ceiling fell in on my bedroom. Like that's how
goodness.
I was not in bed,
Okay,
thankfully.
that's good. I'm glad.
But it was literally on my bed.
Okay.
And that's like the quality of living that the church was offering us, which wasn't very healthy. And so I left the church when I was 18. But I didn't walk away from God because I always saw God within that. Like we wouldn't have money for groceries. And then literally there would be bags of groceries on our doorstep. And we don't know who it's from, like to this day. So we would have stuff like that. So I knew God was real because the devil doesn't drop like random stuff
devil
on your
doesn't
doorstep.
Bless you. Right.
So it was like I couldn't deny God's existence, but I could distance myself from God's people if that's how they are.
Okay.
And I had that perception, and God used education to get me into Christian community. And that's what people don't realize. Like, for me, I work in the pro-life movement, and I wasn't always passionate about it. But for me, that movement itself is what brought me to God in true healing and community. A lot of people talk about abortion and focus on that. That's not... Like, they focus on that, but it was a true community of believers. I started in Wisconsin Lutheran College, so a Lutheran college, and I was a nursing student.
Okay.
They saw me and they said, "You're way too good with people. You're not meant to be a nurse." Sorry to any nurses out there. That's what they said to me. I don't know why.
Nurses also be good with people?
That's what I think too, but that's what they told me. And they were like, "Here's a pregnancy center. We want you to intern there." Okay. And I was like...
These were your professors or your counselors? Okay.
And it's a very small college, and they really get to know you. So it was definitely God, because I started there, and my grandmother had a mental health breakdown because she had an abortion before it was legal. And I had to navigate things I'd never navigated before, and exploring beliefs of like, how do you overcome shame? Mm-hmm. How big is God's grace? And I watched her walk through that. And through that experience, I ended up going to get my master's in social work in Kentucky by my grandma. And I got to do something really special and go through all the abortion healing stuff with her and stand beside her as she like became a spokesperson for these things. And it's just like, that was so healing for my heart to watch these believers surround my grandma and give her a voice to share her own story. And then I was in this graduate school in this very white community.
Okay.
And it just so happened, like, I was not having it with people. I was living alone, very happy living by myself in my apartment alone. And the professors, once again, are like, "You need people. There's a girl who needs a roommate. We're putting you." And I'm like, "Wait, don't I get a say?" And they're like, "Nope." And so suddenly I have a roommate, and I'm like, I don't want a roommate. I was fine by myself.
Yeah.
And then there was a professor who was African American 1 block away from me in this very, very, very white community.
Okay.
And it's like God tied to my childhood for me and said, like, this woman loves and cares for you. And she, on that college campus, brought me back into church community for the first time. She had Bible studies in her house every week, and me and my roommate would go there together. And my roommate was raised in a similar type of church situation.
Okay.
And it was cool because she wasn't against God either. We both went to this Christian school because we wanted to keep that Christian viewpoint.
Right.
In a world
to keep
that's...
God in your season of growing,
Exactly. And it wasn't in the church, but we did find this woman, this professor, who's just like, "Come to my house. You live a block away." Yeah. And it introduced me to the idea of church again, and that not all believers are bad, but God used the pro-life movement to get me there. Like, I discovered that passion, discovered my grandma's story, Then I went for my social work degree so I could run a pregnancy clinic. And so I met this professor and we're there. And then God's like, I came back here and my dad told me about a church in this area. And once again, same thing. My dad's like, that church goes on mission trips and you can go to the LA Dream Center, which I know that's like what you love most in life is these types of organizations.
Right.
And so my dad used that to get me back into church.
Cool.
And it was like God used the threads of social justice to pull me back in. And like, I'm very grateful for the pro-life movement, which I still work for, because it's a bridge between the unbelieving and the church. And a lot of people don't see it that way. They see it as an abortion issue. But what I've encountered is I've worked in pregnancy clinics, which most people have never heard of a pregnancy clinic. There's way more pregnancy clinics than Planned Parenthood, like stunningly more. And you don't hear about them because it's the women that are truly serving God and not even necessarily getting paychecks. And they're ministering to the single moms in every community. And they will seriously, like one of my jobs was sitting next to women who had no one there to give birth. And it was so incredible to see the heart of Jesus. And I could sit here all day and share like miracles. Like one day we prayed for an ultrasound machine. I kid you not, a UPS truck shows up outside our pregnancy clinic and drops off a scholarship kit for an ultrasound machine.
It's amazing.
Like on the same day. And that was just a normal day for me. And
it's just like a Tuesday afternoon.
Yes.
It's awesome.
So it's really incredible.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. So I'm noticing something stringed throughout your story is this this compassion for all people, this heart for those who maybe Jesus would categorize them as the least of these, that single mom who's on her own, that society doesn't always necessarily help, or maybe people aren't guiding these women to pregnancy centers or communities, sitting with them in their labor and delivery rooms, and for children. So this is part of how you came back to Jesus. How is your love and compassion that Jesus has and works through you for these women and children, how does that play into your life today with your work or ministry, or just how you live as a believer?
I think that goes into a part I already warned you about, but
okay,
I'm
here
like,
for it.
for me, it's something I haven't talked about as much, but it's just been like, I'll be the person who's friends with someone that maybe other people will be like, that's like one of your closest friends or whatever. And it's just like, I don't look at titles or money or any of that because it all fades, but like who the person is. And for me, God really showed me his love for me through those friendships. And like, this is where I'm going to talk about Levante.
Okay.
And so my friend who recently died is like, God really showed his love for me through him, because as I ministered to all those people, he gave me this constant companion that I genuinely think other people would overlook. Like when you hear his story, he had a very powerful story, and we look to certain characteristics to say, this is what makes you a leader, this is what makes you a man, this is what makes you this type of person, these are gender roles. And like, he and I kind of defied every possible stereotype you could put on a relationship. And it was just, for me, it was the comfort of what I grew up with, because he was African American. And he was a very loving person who showed love to everybody.
Yes, he was.
And you can very much attest to that. And it's like, he was very humble and quiet. But like, what I discovered at his funeral was everybody knew him. Like, I saw there were so many people at that funeral, and I'm like, wait, he was part of what? And he was just a humble, gentle person. And like, through that, when he died, I saw more of God's love than I'd ever actually seen before. Because for me, what that meant is like, God gave me this person here on earth who walked alongside me. And for me, the day he died was the day I got like my dream job, which we would not have had time to spend together the way we did.
Mm-hmm.
And so I could keep a heart that wasn't bitter, that wasn't unforgiving, that wasn't angry, that wasn't victim mentality, because of him and because of the relationship we had. And he was so committed to loving everyone. And it's funny because he couldn't drive. He had worked a long time and still had not got to the point of getting his license due to some things in his life.
Okay.
And so I would give him a ride to church. And that's how we started hanging out. We just went to church together all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And it became more of like, there was a park I liked to pray at, and he ended up moving a mile away. It would be like 12 o'clock at night, and we'd be getting there from hanging out somewhere, and I'd be like, want to go pray in the park? And he'd be like, sure. And we'd be like dancing and playing in this park that says closed at 10 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was like he was always down for an adventure, and those car rides were times for me to explore my own thoughts in life because I had a captive audience.
Mm-hmm.
And we would just explore all these things, and he would show me God's heart in situations and really show grace in a lot of ways that I hadn't seen before. And where there were times he was definitely looked down upon. There was definitely times where we saw racism in the church, even with him being African American. It was hilarious because he would purposefully introduce me as his big sister.
Mm-hmm.
And
just to throw people off a little bit. Yeah.
And it really was like that. He hung out with my dad. Like, it was just very much like, okay, did he just call her his big sister? Do they know? And it's like, obviously we do. But
yeah,
it would be funny things like that he would take to lighten situations or diffuse situations. And a lot of people do actually know the mental health struggles he had because he was a war veteran. Well, I don't think he actually ever made it overseas, but he was a veteran, and he experienced some very traumatizing things in the military that led to like a lot of PTSD, mental health diagnoses that would make people write him off in this world. And I'm grateful that I looked beyond those labels and said, whatever. And I value your opinion, and you're an equal, because he was in every way. And like some of the diagnoses he had were very much ones that would make you write off his opinion even. And in all honesty, his opinion was never wrong. It turns out I'm seeing now. And it's like, it's just really special to look back, and no matter how long I'm alive, with his death, to me, the verse that comes to mind is no greater love as a man than this, that he would lay down his life for his friends. And like, in a way, I know he spent a lot of his time serving me up until his death. And that's just very incredible. Like, God would put someone on this earth, they would hang out with you all the time, and then they're gone. And so it's, that's what God really, he's just shown his love and grace and favor through a relationship.
Praise God. That's very special and heartwarming to hear just more and more about him. It seems to be that before you see labels, before you see whatever someone wants to label themselves as or society labels them as, you see a friend, you see a person, you look for the fruit. Maybe now other people say you want to know for yourself, and I very much think that reflects Jesus, and I think that's beautiful. If there was something that you wanted to share with people listening in terms of how to break past those boundaries, especially if there's people listening that are in this city where there are so many boundaries, or in the church where there's obviously a lot of boundaries, like, what would you say to someone who's looking for that community or who's looking to break past those things?
I would say a surprising piece of advice. Quit trying to fix people. It's going to drive me nuts. When you walk in and you say, how can I fix people? You're putting the responsibility of Jesus on your shoulders,
Mm.
and there's a weight that was never meant for you to carry in that relationship. And I've been in those relationships too, in social work, and I had to learn to overcome that. Like, you don't need to fix them. God can fix them. And don't show up with an agenda that's like, okay, I'm here with Rayanne today. What do I need to speak to her? I need to fix her by the end of this day or this conversation. Like, let it go. Just like show up and have fun. And like, let God do what God's going to do. He will do it, and he can use you to accomplish it. But you just have to show up and have fun. It's like we had that dance class. It's like, that's something I've waited forever. Like, just go dance. Like, do stuff with people. Like,
Nike,
go.
Just do it.
For real. Shout out to Nike on that one. But it's like, you got to do that. Like, go. You're white. Go to the north side. Go hang out. Do what you love over there.
Yeah.
Like, get your basketball and go over there. You're from the north side. Come over to the suburbs, bring your basketball, play basketball. Don't go in with the mentality that you're going to fix the entire city, because that's only God can do that. But just show up knowing that you have Jesus and work on your relationship with Jesus. Like, when you focus on you, you show up as a much better person to everyone around you, and that fixes them.
Yes.
It creates a lot less conflict and issues, and you gotta have fun. Like, that's some of my fondest memories as a child, is like dancing in the streets with people I barely knew and stuff like that. And it was absolutely fun. I didn't need a degree for that. I didn't need to start a nonprofit for that. I just showed up.
We're with them. You're just spending that genuine time.
Yep.
With them. I've noticed even in the ways that you've answered some of my questions, it always goes back to connection with a person, a group of people, or just God connecting with you through things happening in your life, or through these other people, and just his love for you that then goes to the people around you. And I think that's really beautiful, and you just focus on his face, and then he adds those other things. So what are some things that God has added into your life, that he's doing in your life right now, that involve community or involve people? What is that? What's happening?
I think that's really funny you say that as we're sitting here. It's like, my heart, God put me in the suburbs for a really long time, and I was frustrated by that, because that wasn't like my community that I grew up with, and it was just very different for me. And I just always had a heart to be back in the city of Milwaukee, and I would pray, and God would be like, not yet, not yet, not yet, not yet, not yet, 4 years. And God has really opened those doors with Levante's death. I suddenly became friends with all of his friends, as you know, at a deeper level. And it's like, it's been amazingly fun, and my family can attest. I've spent a lot more time with them. I spend quite a bit of time with my family, actually, in this season. And my sister has 3 little kids that I'm with all the time.
They're so cute.
They're very adorable. And so, like, I do a lot of that. But I've also had so much fun. Like, we've had that workout dance class and, like, these ministry nights. Mostly the people I'm around in this season, it seems like, are mostly Spanish speaking. And I don't actually understand what they're saying all the time, but I can understand pretty well. And it's just been a whole different part of being very in my community, even the neighborhoods I'm in. And for me, it's brought back so many fond memories of my childhood. And it's just been playing with all these other young women. And historically, I couldn't find other young women that wanted to truly, that their heart was in the right posture, and they wanted to be out hanging out in the streets and doing random stuff. It was always guys. And this is like, I've told you that this is, you're one of the first people who's been like, okay, let's just go do ministry in the streets together. And that has been incredibly special for me, and it's been really fun to honestly play a lot with people, dancing, and we're going to a music thing with someone you interviewed recently on Saturday. And it's just like getting to be in the streets with the community that's already there. And that has been extraordinary, because that is a huge part of where my heart is it's not people from the outside coming in, but the people right there impacting the community for Jesus. And I honestly don't fully know what God's doing in this season because he is doing a lot of things in my life at once.
As
but
he usually does. So
he
many
does.
things at once, right?
It's been like the last year of my life has been about transformation and total change in the best way possible. And I'm just like, I'm really loving that and loving hanging out with my family. And then I have an incredible job that actually I get to travel a lot. Love going to coffee shops, as we talked about.
Yes.
And I'm seriously getting to go to new ones because I cover 7 counties. And so I'll be like in a different county on a different day. And I'll be like, okay, where's the local coffee shop?
Yeah.
I'm going to go try that one. So
Nice.
It's been incredibly fun. And it has felt like it's been a closing of one chapter to open for a new chapter. And this has been like God saying, honestly, I feel like there's so many things I would do differently, but he's being like, you did it. You did what I wanted you to do. You hear my voice, and I need you to have confidence that you do hear my voice. And now, like, go play with the people that you would have picked from the beginning. And so it's just been really fun and rewarding.
That's beautiful. I know that you have been really resonating with sunflowers lately, this blooming, and there's this phrase that I've been seeing around a lot the last maybe 2 years, is to bloom where you're planted. And it really seems like you are blooming in the areas that God has planted you in, and I'm so excited to see what he continues to do and what this next chapter looks like. And maybe we'll have you on again to share what that story is, and whatever timing that would be, as God wills. But thank you so much for sharing all these beautiful things God has done, and he gets so much glory just from you speaking. It was really great to have you.
Thank you for having me. It was really fun to do this with you.
Yeah, it was super fun. So thank you, everybody, for watching and tuning in to my story. Next time, Pastor Mark will be back. But it was really fun to be here and to host and to interact with everybody who's online watching right now. And we just pray that you be blessed and have a great rest of your week.